Welcome to the Preparation for Reparations Podcast, Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho. This is episode 2, where we're going to be focusing on Maat-zoed-za-duaras, building community power from the ground up. Welcome back to the Preparation for Reparations Podcast, Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho. I'm your host, Esther Kosei. For those joining us for the first time, Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho is a powerful phrase from our Afrikan ancestors that means we are preparing ourselves. It reminds us that reparations isn't something that just happens to us or for us. Reparations are something that we actively make happen through reclaiming our agency and becoming the reparatory justice change that we wish to see in the world. This preparation isn't just preliminary work before reparations eventually arrive. It is itself an active part of creating and securing reparations as a process. The work we do to document, heal, and build community power is reparations in action, or repair in action, if that makes more sense. Before we begin, as is customary, let us pour brief libations to honor our ancestresses and ancestors and set our intentions for this podcast. We pour libation to the Creator, source of wisdom and justice, to Mother Earth, who holds our stories, to the ancestresses and ancestors who prepared the way, whose blood flows through our veins, whose wisdom guides our step, whose struggles light our path. May our words honor their sacrifices. May our works advance our struggle for full repair. Ashe, Ashe, Asheo. In our first episode, we explored how preparation is a form of power, how actively strengthening ourselves creates the conditions for justice rather than us simply demanding it. This preparation isn't just a precursor to reparations, it is repair in action, a form of self-repair that begins the healing and justice process immediately. Today, we're diving deeper into a practical tool for this reparatory work. These are the Maat-zoed-za-duaras, our Maat Action Learning Circles. And I'll say a bit more about what they are in a short while. But I wanted to just first of all reflect on issues of language and cognitive justice in this podcast. And it's important to do so in acknowledgement of some of the feedback that we've received about our use of African terminologies, like the phrase Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, which accompanies the Preparation to Reparations title of the podcast, and also terms like Maat-zoed-za-duaras. So we hear you and we appreciate your engagement with our podcast. It's important that we're having this conversation together. Some have suggested that we simplify our language to make these concepts more accessible. We understand this perspective and want to explain why we continue to use these terms. Part of the damage of the Maangamizi has been to cut us off from our languages, our conceptualizations of the world, and our ways of knowing and being. When we reclaim these terms, we're doing more than just using unfamiliar words that perhaps we find it difficult to pronounce. We're reconnecting with how our ancestresses and ancestors overstood the world. We're ensuring they can hear us speaking in conceptual frameworks they would recognize. This is what Professor Chinweizu meant when he spoke of reparations as being first and foremost about repairs of the mind, which he meant as the reclaiming of our African ancestral minds and our own cognitive frameworks as an African people. I also want to emphasize something crucial. Much of today's reparations discourse is troublingly devoid of our African ancestresses and ancestors themselves. We must remember that our very claim to reparations is fundamentally rooted in what was done to them first. The ethics and principles of African reparations require that we centre them and our future generations in all our work. That we centre our ancestresses and ancestors not as abstract historical figures, but as real people whose dignity was violated and whose wisdom continues to guide us. When we speak of reparatory justice without invoking them, we risk reducing reparations to a merely material transaction, rather than the profound spiritual, cultural, and historical restoration and reconnection that it must be. Our ancestresses and ancestors are not simply the basis of our claims, they are active participants in our struggle for full repair, or planet repairs. And our work must honour their sacrifices by embodying the values of Ubuntu, of Maat, and intergenerational justice that they would recognise. Now, just to remind us, Maat really speaks to 7 key virtues. They are truth, justice, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity, and propriety. We want to lovingly challenge all of us. What are we actually doing to strengthen our own reparations processes? Many claim the identity of reparations campaigner or activist, but how many of us are engaged in systematic work to prepare for the reparatory justice changes that we are seeking? How many of us are engaged in consistent study and disciplined action learning? We're bombarded daily with social media empowerment, this and that, but how much are our actual lives changing? How are our material conditions improving? Or have we become comfortable in our own captivity? In creating this podcast, we've often reflected on whether this format serves our community in an era of diminishing attention spans and endless scrolling through social media feeds. We see our people consuming endless streams of content on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook, often without the depth needed for genuine transformation. Yet, we believe that part of reparatory justice is reclaiming our capacity for sustained thought, critical analysis, and deep listening. Our African ancestresses and ancestors engaged in extended processes of deliberation and learning. They understood that wisdom cannot be compressed into sound bites. Perhaps the very act of committing to listen, reflect, and engage with complex ideas and difficult sounding terms is itself a form of resistance against cognitive colonization. So, We invite you to use this podcast as an opportunity for honest self-reflection. Where are you in your journey? How are your daily habits either contributing to or hindering your capacity for real reparatory work? This isn't about judgment. It's an invitation to return to the practices of focused attention and collective study and action learning that have always been central to movements for liberation. We also understand that these educational podcasts require focused attention in a world of short-form content. If you find it challenging to listen to the entire episode at once, we encourage you to break it up according to your own attention span. Each section is designed to stand on its own. Perhaps listen to the introduction and reflection now, and then return later for the practical guide. Take notes, pause to reflect, discuss sections with others in your family or community groups. This isn't about passive edutainment. It's a study tool for active engagement in our reparatory justice work. This podcast series isn't just information. It's an invitation to transformation. Yes, these concepts require time, effort, and commitment to overstand. But if we're serious about reparatory justice, we must be willing to stretch beyond the comfortable and the familiar. It is not by accident that you have chosen to listen today. We invite you to sit with any discomfort you feel when encountering African terminology or challenging concepts, or even talk that you think is too long. Ask yourself, is this discomfort a sign that I've been conditioned to value certain knowledge systems over others? Could engaging with these terms be part of my own repair work? We're listening to your feedback and will continue to respond and evolve this podcast to serve our community's needs, recognizing that we're at different levels. But we also invite you to join us in this journey of reclaiming our cognitive heritage as part of our reparatory justice work. So, what are Maat-zoed-za-duaras and why they matter now? In our current global moment, the need for Maat-zoed-za-duaras has never been more urgent, as the African Union has declared 2025 the year of justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. Grassroots movements continue their decades-long work of building community power and demanding justice. At the same time, high-level processes, including recent Commonwealth discussions on reparations and CARICOM's 10-point plan, risk proceeding without our community's full participation and leadership. Most government-led processes conflate reparations with state-determined development priorities that often reinforce existing power structures rather than transforming them according to our community's own sense of what is justice. This is precisely why Maat-zoed-za-duaras matter now. They ensure that the growing global momentum for reparations is grounded in the lived experiences, needs, and wisdom of our communities. But what exactly is a Maat-zoed-za-duara? Think of a Maat-zoed-za-duara like a family kitchen table where multiple generations gather not just to share meals, but to share stories, to heal wounds, and plan for the future. It would be a space where families and communities practice self-repair through documenting histories, her stories, our stories, gathering evidence of ongoing harms, understanding intergenerational trauma, creating healing practices, building connections across generations, and developing practical solutions in the here and now. So this term, Maat-zoed-za-duaras, connects to traditional African practices like Akan family councils or Obuso and Komos, where extended family members gather to resolve disputes, make collective decisions, and transmit cultural knowledge. It recalls the West African griot tradition, where community historians or Austorians preserve and share collective memory through storytelling. It embodies what the Bantu-speaking peoples know as the Indaba, purposeful dialogue where everyone's voice is heard in working towards collective solutions. By grounding our work in these familiar traditional practices, we show how the Maat-zoed-za-duaras draw on ancestral wisdom while adapting to address contemporary challenges of reparatory justice. This approach isn't entirely new. It builds on proven cultural traditions of intergenerational knowledge sharing and community decision making. The Maat-zoed-za-duaras simply applies these enduring principles to the current phase of our struggle for holistic reparatory justice or planet repairs. For instance, imagine a family in Brixton, London, meeting monthly in their living room. 3 generations might gather as a grandmother shares stories of arriving from Jamaica in the 1960s and facing housing discrimination. Her son might record these stories, creating a digital archive, while her granddaughter might map out how these housing patterns continue to affect their community today. The concept of the Maat-zoed-za-duaras comes from combining Maat, the ancient Kemetic principle of truth, justice, and cosmic balance, with zoed-za-duaras, meaning in Kiswahili, an action learning circle or a practice ring. So somewhere where we learn to do something or to be something. These are spaces where theory meets practice, where learning leads directly to action. And why is this approach necessary right now? Digital colonialism is embedding old hierarchies in new technologies. Climate disasters are disproportionately impacting our communities, while our traditional knowledge solutions are appropriated without credit. Economic systems continue to extract wealth from our labour and resources. These challenges demand a response that combines deep historical understanding with practical action for the present. This is what Maat-zoed-za-duaras provide, a framework for connecting our past to our present and building our future. So now I want to talk about how Maat-zoed-za-duaras build power to secure reparatory justice. Maat-zoed-za-duaras aren't isolated initiatives. They're the foundation of a participatory approach to reparations and the building blocks of our collective power. When we document our stories, heal our communities, and create our own solutions, we simultaneously build the unified power needed to secure external forms of repair. This grassroots power is what enables us to make demands of governments, corporations, and institutions that have and continue to benefit from the Maangamizi. These circles connect directly to the Pan-African Reparations Rebellion groundings and the People's Assemblies on African Reparations being stewarded by the Stop the Maangamizi We Charge Genocide Ecocide campaign. And these in turn lay essential groundwork for the establishment of the All-Party Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry for Truth and Reparatory Justice, otherwise known as the Maat-zoed-za-duaras. At each level, our community-built knowledge and solidarity strengthens our capacity to secure institutional accountability. To make this concrete, imagine a family Maat-zoed-za-duaras forming in Birmingham, UK. They document how a grandparent was denied employment opportunities upon arrival from Ghana in the 1950s. And if they connect with other Maat-zoed-za-duaras in their region, they discover numerous families with similar experiences, revealing a systematic pattern rather than isolated incidents. Their combined testimonies can create compelling evidence which can be utilized to develop policy recommendations for the Maat-zoed-za-duaras. This connection is crucial because we face three significant dangers in reparations processes: state capture, movement capture, and elite capture. State capture occurs when governments appropriate reparations narratives to serve their diplomatic or economic interests without addressing the structural or root causes of harm, or indeed centering affected communities who live with the impacts of these continuing harms. Movement capture happens when well-resourced organizations claim to represent community interests, that is African heritage community interests, while advancing their own agendas or limiting the scope of demands. Elite capture manifests when the benefits of reparatory initiatives primarily flow to those already privileged within our societies, such as academic elites, political elites, or business elites, rather than reaching those most impacted by the ongoing manifestations of the Maangamizi. The Maat-zoed-za-duaras approach ensures that reparatory justice emerges from the ground up, placing our communities in the driving seat. Through these circles, our communities become the primary definers of harm, the articulators of needs, and the architects of solutions based on our African people's conceptualizations of justice, such as Maat. This self-definition and self-organization is itself a form of power building and preparation that changes the dynamics when approaching institutions for redress. When we establish Maat-zoed-za-duaras and link them together, we create networks of community action learning circles that multiply our collective strength. These connected circles don't just allow communities to share knowledge and put reparatory justice into practice. They create a harmonized chorus of multiple voices with a shared purpose. 1,000 isolated voices can be ignored. 1,000 diverse voices harmonized in their demands for justice cannot be dismissed. We need not speak as one. Our power comes from many voices, creating a crescendo that rises towards our shared goals while honouring our different experiences of the Maangamizi. For example, Maat-zoed-za-duaras could begin documenting patterns of health disparities in their communities, such as the crisis in black maternal health. By sharing this information across their networks, communities could trace these patterns back to specific housing policies, environmental inequalities, and healthcare disparities. This collective evidence becomes powerful proof of systemic injustice that can drive legal and political action. These networks from the Grassroots Foundation for the envisioned Ubuntu Gotla, which is a proposed People's International Tribunal for Global Justice that would apply African legal principles to judge the crimes of the Maangamizi. This approach directly supports the aims of the Stop the Maangamizi campaign to increase recognition of the Maangamizi, to gather evidence of its continuing impact, to mobilise communities, catalyse reparatory justice movements, and organise our resistance. This is how we ensure substantive rather than merely descriptive representation occurs in reparations processes. It's not enough to have people who look like us in decision-making positions. We need processes and structures that truly reflect our community's knowledges, experiences, and aspirations. I'm now going to share some practical guidance on setting up your Maat-zoed-za-duaras. Now, let's get practical. How exactly do you establish a Maat-zoed-za-duaras in your family or community? So there are a number of steps that I want to share with you. 7 steps to be precise. So step 1, gather your circle. Begin with your immediate family or close community members. Invite maybe 5 to 10 people who share a commitment to reparatory justice, including elders who hold our family histories, young people seeking to understand their heritage, community activists and people with skills, perhaps in research, documentation, storytelling, and other forms of creative production. So one scenario is, say, a person in Kingston, Jamaica could begin simply by inviting their grandfather, parents, siblings and cousins for Sunday dinner with a purpose. They could explain that they want to document their family history and understand how past injustices continue to affect them today. So in this case, your Maat-zoed-za-duaras should reflect the diversity of experiences within your family or your community, ensuring that marginalized or less heard voices, particularly those of women, children and elders, have equal opportunity to share their experiences and their stories. Step 2, create your meeting structure. Establish regular meeting times and a consistent format that includes opening rituals, such as libation or prayer or meditation, check-ins, a main discussion or activity, planning for action, and perhaps some closing reflections. Your meeting structure should honour the ways that your family or your community has traditionally gathered, while creating space for all voices to be heard. Step 3, document your histories. Begin collecting and recording the stories of your family and community's experiences of the Maangamizi through oral history interviews, family photographs collection and documents, historical research, and also mapping your family's journey. So one real life example is that of the Murray family in the UK. And this provides an inspiring model with their recently published Murray Family History that was published in 2024. The book documents the journey of Ulrich Murray from Barbados to England, his marriage in 1971, and the rich stories of his Barbadian ancestry. The project exemplifies intergenerational knowledge transfer, with the family's younger generations participating in genealogical research and documenting their African Caribbean roots. Beyond just recording history, the family members actively engaged multiple generations in the process of discovery, documentation, and meaning making. This kind of documentation provides the foundation upon which more formal Maat-zoed-za-duaras can build. Step 4. Linking your family's experience to bigger patterns. Help participants understand how their own individual experiences of the Maangamizi connect to broader patterns, structural patterns, as outlined in the Stop the Maangamizi petition, including police brutality, educational menticide, racist immigration policies, health inequalities, and economic exclusion. A scenario that I can provide here is, for instance, a family in South Africa could begin by discussing their personal experiences with the educational system, potentially discovering that despite decades of community advocacy, the curriculum has changed minimally, revealing a pattern of what the Stop the Maangamizi petition calls menticide. Step 5. Develop healing practices. Here, you can create rituals and practices that address historical and ongoing trauma, including family ceremonies, communal ceremonies, healing circles, reclaiming suppressed cultural practices that perhaps may have been demonized, and developing new traditions. So a healing circle in Martinique could form when several families realize that their shared health challenges might connect to historical patterns of plantation labor and food insecurity. They could create a monthly healing ritual combining traditional plant medicine, communal cooking, and movement practices. This isn't just preparation for future reparations. It is repair in action, as communities reclaim healing practices that colonial systems sought to destroy, directly addressing the health impacts of continuing trauma and oppression. Step 6. Build strategic action. Here is where we move from the analysis to action by developing specific initiatives to address the identified harms that get revealed in these Maat-zoed-za-duaras. So, for instance, it might entail lobbying elected officials or organising community education programmes, initiatives, creating support systems for affected families, or developing economic cooperation, building youth programmes, and documenting environmental harms. And step 7. connect with other circles to build unified power. Here is where you can link your Maat-zoed-za-duaras with others to build the collective power needed to hold external entities accountable. This happens through regional gatherings, sharing documentation and strategies, collaborating on joint actions, and building solidarity across different experiences of the Maangamizi. For instance, Maat-zoed-za-duaras in different cities can connect online and in person, discovering identical patterns of discrimination that reveal systemic policies rather than isolated incidents. When these circles coordinate their approaches to institutions, for instance, their impact can be transformative. So what may have begun as a family healing circle can become a formidable movement with the power to secure institutional accountability. Okay, so let me share a little case study envisioning a Maat-zoed-za-duaras in action. Imagine a group of families from various Caribbean islands and West African nations forming a Maat-zoed-za-duaras in South London. They begin by examining the Stop the Maangamizi petition together, identifying which aspects have directly impacted their families, such as police brutality or menticide or racist immigration policies or underemployment and unemployment, and of course economic exclusion. Through regular meetings, these families could map their personal experiences to these broader patterns. A grandfather might share how his son was unjustly incarcerated, connecting this to the petition's point about expanding prison industrial complexes. A mother might describe her children's experiences of cultural erasure in schools, linking this to menticide of African heritage youth, for example. As they deepen their understanding, they could begin documenting these experiences, creating family archives and testimonies that preserve not only the harms experienced, but also document the resistance strategies that they employed. These might include community mutual aid networks, supplementary education initiatives, partner schemes, or cultural preservation practices. The Maat-zoed-za-duaras would then move from documentation to action. Using the updated Stop the Maangamizi campaign letter as a tool, they might begin lobbying their local MP to support grassroots reparation planning. They could organise educational workshops and establish healing circles to address some of the intergenerational trauma still being experienced by family and community members. When a new government policy threatens to exacerbate these harms, this Maat-zoed-za-duaras would be prepared to respond with evidence of how such policies continue colonial patterns. By connecting with other Maat-zoed-za-duaras, they could amplify their impact and contribute evidence to the all-party parliamentary group for African reparations. The power of this approach lies in its ability to connect personal experiences to structural patterns, transforming individual pain into collective action while building the infrastructure for participatory approaches to reparatory justice. When these Maat-zoed-za-duaras connect and harmonise their efforts, They create the unified community power needed to effectively hold governments, institutions, and corporations accountable. The evidence and demands that emerge from organised communities carry a weight and legitimacy that isolated individual claims simply cannot match. So, now I move to a call to action, where we invite you to begin establishing your own Maat-zoed-za-duaras today. The time is now, not in some distant future, but immediately. You can do this in your homes and your community settings. Remember, each Maat-zoed-za-duaras you create doesn't just heal and document. It becomes part of our collective strength to secure reparatory justice from external institutions, as well as us being the reparatory justice change that we wish to seek, which is our own self-repair. What begins in your living room can contribute to systemic change when joined with others. Begin with your immediate circle of 5 to 10 people from your family or your own community grouping. Start with simple storytelling, asking questions like, what's the earliest family story you remember? Then move to more systemic documentation of family trees, including photographs and perhaps conducting interviews. Connect personal stories to structural patterns of the Maangamizi by researching how your family's experiences relate to broader historical policies of injustice. Expand your circle strategically by connecting with other families doing similar work. And finally, you can move from documentation to action with specific initiatives based on what you've learned. So we invite you to reflect on these 3 questions. What's your family story? And what challenges have they faced? And in this, you may want to highlight the experiences of a particular family member. Secondly, what wisdom and resistance strategies exist in your family or your community? And thirdly, what one small action can you take this week to begin building your own Maat-zoed-za-duaras? Remember that by establishing these circles, you're not just preparing for some distant future reparations outcome. You will be actively creating and securing repair right now. Your documentation work is reparatory. Your healing work is repair. Your community building is repair. The process itself is transformative reparatory justice in action. Your Maat-zoed-za-duaras might start small, but when connected to others throughout the region, throughout the country, and across the diaspora, for instance, it can become a powerful part of a global movement that is already enacting reparatory justice, not merely waiting for it. Okay, so now it's time to move into our closing. Thank you for joining me today. In a world of accelerating change, our preparation determines whether we will be subjects or architects of the future. Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho is not just our ancestral wisdom. It's our contemporary imperative. In our next episode, we will explore the power of testimony, documenting our experiences for reparatory justice. We'll dive into practical techniques for recording our stories, for organising our family and community knowledges, and transforming your documentation into evidence that can support our claims for repair and also influence reparatory policy. This is Esther Kosei on behalf of the Maangamizi Educational Trust, reminding you that our own preparation is itself reparations in action, and it's most powerful when we do it together, across generations, guided by Maat. When we say preparation for reparations, Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, we're not just getting ready for something that might happen later in some distant future. We're actively creating and securing the conditions for repair through our own self-directed repair work right now. Our documentation, our healing practices, our family and community building initiatives, these aren't just preparation for reparations. They are part of reparations in process. And by reparations, of course, I mean repair, which is the root of that word, reparations. Want to also thank Brother Daniel Kofi, our technical assistant, for all of your support.